guys, it's Tahira, and it's been well over a month since I've posted. I've just had honestly such a busy past month, and I just honestly didn't feel like making any videos because I was also kind of in a reading slump, and I've been kind of slowly working my way to try to get out of that. And I also had like Thanksgiving, and then I also had like a health issue I was dealing with. So a lot of just personal life things compounding all at the same time. But now it is December, but we're already halfway through December. But I have a bunch of like end of the year stuff that I'm going to be putting out, like all my like wrap ups for my best stuff of the stuff that I read this year, worst books that I read this year, and all of that. But I decided to start off all of this with doing an end of the year book tag, which is just a rapid fire sort of reflection on the past year of some of the books that you've read. I have 10 questions here that I kind of pulled from different places. I watched a couple of other people's videos, pulled some questions from there. So really it's just a bunch of random questions that I found on YouTube after watching people's videos. I'm just gonna be going through those today. So the very first question, we're starting off with reflecting on the books that we hoped to get to this year but we didn't. And I feel like this happens every year. You set like a list of books that you hope to get to that year, and then at the end you're like, wait, I didn't get to any of these. But the one that I got pretty early on in the year, in the first half, and I really wanted to get to, but clearly it's December and I didn't get to it, but that is The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. I am really excited to get into like his world, which is the Cosmere, and I've heard so many good things about it. And I know that one of his newest books, I think Wind and Truth, just came out, and after seeing like all the hype for that book, I just kind of want to know the hype for like this whole world. And I know this series is really beloved by a lot of people. So I know that a lot of people say that in the Brandon Sanderson like Cosmere universe, the best place to start is The Final Empire, but I actually decided to start with Elantris, which is like a standalone fantasy novel, and I don't know if that was a great choice because I ended up giving this that book like 2.5 stars. I think it was just a little bit too like low stakes and slow for me, and just so much world building going on, and it was just a lot for me to process while I was reading it. And I really thought that his books would be like super fast paced and action packed and a lot going on and heavy plot, but that book just did not end up being it. But I think The Final Empire and like a lot of the other books are supposed to be like really fast paced and action packed and really like a lot of battle scenes. So I'm really excited to get to this one, and I'm making it a big priority in 2025. Then the next question is your biggest letdown or disappointment of the year. I'm gonna actually make probably a whole video about my biggest like disappointments of the year, but one I'm gonna point out that's gonna be in that video too is House of Flame and Shadow, which I feel like might be an answer for a lot of people. This one was the highly anticipated conclusion to the Crescent City, like the first arc of the series, I guess, because I know there's going to be a spin-off series trilogy with, I think, following different characters. But this was the last book for that arc, and I truly love the Crescent City series. It's one of my those books are some of my favorites of all time. I love those books and that story, but this one I think was just a little bit disappointing because of the way it ended a little bit too neatly for my taste. And the way that the second book ended, if you know, you know, like it ended in such a crazy way, and we found out like so many reveals from that book about like not just the Crescent City world, but I guess this is mild spoilers, but like how the universes are connected, because we do kind of know that they're all set in the same universe, but Sarah J Maas really explicitly sort of laid out like how they're connected in that book, which is really exciting. So I was expecting like really big things from the third book. And in that second book, we also established this like really powerful villainous people that have been sort of doing all these terrible things for many years across many worlds, and we were led to believe that their work is how like all the worlds are connected. And basically like this villain has been affecting everything for thousands and thousands of years, and so of course it should be hard to defeat. But towards the end of the book, where like the villains got defeated and everything, I feel like that was a little bit realistic. Like literally we started talking about black holes at some point, and it just got really unrealistic to what the world was, and I thought it would be a little bit more grounded than what it was. And also they got defeated like so quickly. We had this like big, like these books are not small, so we had this big build up to like this final, I guess, battle that would happen between the main characters and these villains. but it ended up just being like honestly a few pages long, and then they were defeated. And then it was sort of like happily ever after. Everyone was totally fine, everyone was together with who they wanted to be, and I was just expecting a lot more of a ending from that book than what it gave me. The next question is book on your TBR that was on there the longest that you read this year. And I actually did a whole video earlier on in the year of like reading books that have been on my TBR the longest, because those books had been on my TBR for like 8 years, but I'm gonna only be talking about one of them today, which is The Walled City. The Walled City is, I am saying this because this is one of the first books I remember I got when I moved to California, which was in 2016. So at this point, it's like 8.5 years ago, which usually I never try to keep books on my like TBR for that long, but that one had just been sitting there. It didn't really catch my interest, but I didn't force myself to read it, but I made a priority to read it because of that video, and I ended up really enjoying it. I gave it like, I think 4 stars. I thought it was a really like dark and fast-paced like dystopian YA novel, which I think is super underrated because I had never heard anyone talk about that book either, which was also another reason I wasn't really picking it up, because no one was talking about it, no one was really hyping it up for me. And I had sort of picked it up at a random bookstore in San Francisco because I had read Wolf by Wolf recently at the time, and I really loved that book, so I decided to pick that up, and I read it this year finally. But I'm really glad that I did. I really enjoyed that one. The next question is your favorite book that you've reread this year. I can't really remember, honestly, a lot of books that I reread. Honestly, I think the only books that I reread were Sergio Mas books, because I read the first 2 books of ACOTAR, like that series. But my favorite, I guess, would have to always be Throne of Glass, because this is like one of my favorite books of all time, my favorite series of all time, and this just means so much to me. It's sort of the book that really got me into like reading, in the sense of like finding a community. This really helped me find a community on booktube. Like I had been reading before this, obviously I've always been an avid reader, but I don't know, this one just has a really special place in my heart. I read this when I was like probably 13 years old, almost 14, and I fell in love, and I will always love rereading the series. This one's also been super fun because, as I said, the Crescent City series has sort of established that all these universes are connected and how they're connected. So it was really fun to go back to see sort of the history of this book and try to connect it to how like the other worlds and their history, and sort of like find all the intertwining like symbols and connections and just things that might be Easter eggs for things later on. So that I've been really enjoying my reread of this. The next question is your favorite author that you found this year. So there's not a ton of authors that I read like enough books of to be like, okay, they're one of my favorite authors of all time. But 2 authors that I'm really interested in reading their other books, and I really enjoyed what I read of them this year, is Elsie Silver. I started the Chestnut Spring series, and I read Flawless and Heartless, and I fell in love with Heartless. It's probably going to be on my favorite books of the year. I think about that book often, and honestly, like, I'm really excited to continue the series. I also really want to read the Wild Love series. I don't know what it's called, but that one also I want to read after the Chestnut Springs. I actually really like the whole small town cowboy romance. Like, I feel like I don't want to read a ton of them just because I feel like they might end up getting repetitive, but what I am reading of Chestnut Springs I'm really enjoying, and I can't wait to like continue the series on in 2025. The other one is Sarah Adams. I read Practice Makes Perfect and When in Rome. When in Rome I actually didn't like as much as Practice Makes Perfect, but Practice Makes Perfect I loved so much. It was so cute. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I really liked the dynamic between the 2 main characters. I thought they were really cute. And I really want to read the Rule book by Sarah Adams as well as, and I know she's coming out with a new book in 2025, so she's definitely an author that I'm going to keep my eye on, and hopefully I like more of her books. Then it's an author that didn't work for you this year. This one's also hard because there's not an author that I read like multiple times and didn't like every time I read the book I didn't like it. The only author that I decided to put on here is one that didn't work for me this year, but I'm hoping will work for me in like future years, and that is R.F. Kuang. I read Yellowface last year, and I just did not like it. I know this book has mixed opinions, so I don't really know if I just didn't get the message or like what happened, but I just didn't really like the writing style. I didn't really like the conversations. I feel like it was too grounded in things like Twitter discourse and social media discourse that it sort of didn't feel like we were actually having like productive conversations about the industry as a whole. But this is a super popular author. I really want to read The Poppy War. I want to read Babel, and I know she has a new book coming out called Catabasis or Catabasis, I think in 2025, and or maybe after, I don't know, but all of those sound super interesting to me, and they're all fantasy as well, so I'm really interested to see if I like her fantasy works more. But so far, like, her contemporary one just didn't hit with me. The next question is the most frustrating book that you read this year, and I'm actually going to talk about Elantris. This one I was really excited for because of course it's Brandon Sanderson. I was really excited to get to his into his universe and books. But this one, I don't know, maybe it just wasn't a great place to start for someone who wants like high action scenes and like a fast-paced fantasy novel, which this just was not. And it was frustrating in the sense that I just really wanted to love it, and I kept pushing through because of that. And it is a really big book. Honestly, it's like more than 600 pages, and the pace of the novel is very slow. It's a very slow moving plot. And honestly, things don't really even happen until the last 50 pages, which is kind of insane. But yeah, it was frustrating in the sense that it was slow and it was really long, and it was also my first Brandon Sanderson book, and I really wanted to enjoy it, but I just didn't. Then is the most unique book that you read this year, so the book with the most unique concept. And for this one, I'm gonna go with Night Film by Marisha Pessl, just because of the way this is written. So this one is about a man named Scott McGrath, and he is looking into the death of this girl named Ashley Cordova, and he's trying to figure out what really happened with that. And he's sort of on the way to doing that, he falls into like this whole world of following her dad, who is this really renowned like director, filmmaker in that world. And he just falls into his world because he's really known to be twisty and like create horror, like dark, disturbing horror movies, I believe. And it was just a really interesting concept, especially because the way it's written is that there's multimedia. So there's like pictures, there's newspaper clippings, there's website clippings, there's forms and transcripts, and it's just a lot of different moving interactive pieces that I thought was really cool, and added a lot more like realness to the story and made the story feel a lot more like real. I really like commend the author for the way that she was able to write the book. I thought it was a really unique reading experience for me. Then it's books that you want to read by the end of the year, and I have a few different books that I want for that. Whether I'll get to them or not is an entirely different question, but a girl can hope. Especially because I'm literally leaving to go back home to California for the last couple of weeks of the year, and I'm going to be extremely busy there because I have a ton of family coming in from another state, as well as a wedding in the family. So I just have a lot going on, and I don't think I'm going to actually find the time to really read that much. So really, am I going to get to these books? Maybe. But the first one is of course finishing or continuing my Throne of Glass reread. There's no way I'm gonna finish. But reading Air of Fire, which is the next book, it doesn't help that this is like where the books start getting longer. So this is almost 500 pages. So we'll see if I can really get to this, but I really want to. The next one is Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. One, because this is literally a library book and it's overdue already. So I need to like get to this stat before I leave so that I can return it. And also I've heard a lot of really good things about it. I have seen so much hype for Frederick Bachman this year. I know his books aren't new at all, but I've just seen so much, like them so much more online, at least for me. So I'm really excited to get into his books. But the last book that I am making a priority to get to, and I know I can because it's a graphic novel, and that is Heartstopper Volume 5. This was in the newest release that just came out this past year, I believe, or maybe it was the year before. But I don't know what's taking me so long, because this will literally take me like less than an hour to read. I don't know what I'm waiting for, but I think I'm gonna reread the first 4 books because those are also gonna be super quick before I read this one, because I think Volume 6 is coming out in 2025. So yeah, I'm really excited about this one. I don't need to talk about it. I feel like I talk about it so often that how much I love the Heartstopper books, and like how much I have literally raved about them throughout the years. I feel like that's so obvious. But yeah, I am mark my words, I will get to this before the end of the year. Like I could literally read this tonight in like an hour and be done with it. I just don't know why I haven't. And then the last thing to do is to do a reflection on your Goodreads goal for the year, as well as talk about like what my goal will be, I think, for next year. So this year I set a goal of 50 books. And I didn't know if I would be able to reach it. One, because during college, I had completely like slowed down my reading so much from like before college. From like when I was in high school and middle school, I was reading like 70 to 120 books a year. And after college, it became like a lot more slowed down. I was only reading like 30 to 40 books a year, if that. And I set a goal of 50 every year, but I didn't think I would reach it this year. But I actually am currently at 58 books. So I am really happy that I was able to not only hit it, but cross it by like a significant amount. I did graduate college this year. I did move and I did start a new job, which I think is all crazy that all of this happened this year. But I am surprised I was able to read as much as I did despite all these like big life events happening. I feel like for next year, I'm going to try to keep it at 50 books. I feel like anything more than that is going to feel like overwhelming and feel like I'm not going to be able to hit it. I feel like at this point in my life, 50 is a good goal to have. I feel like it is reachable, it's approachable, and it doesn't feel like overwhelming. It's just about a book a week, actually a little bit less than a book a week. So I feel like that's very doable for my lifestyle and how much time I like read and how much time it takes me to usually read a book. So I'm probably gonna keep it at 50 books, but I'm of course hoping that I can go past that like I did this year. I'm probably gonna end up hitting around 60 books this year, which is great. So I think keeping it at an approachable 50 is a good point for me. But I envy the people that can read like so much and retain everything, because that's just not me. I can't do that. But yeah, this is all for my end of the year book tag. I know this is such a random like set of questions that I got from like various locations, but I still hope you enjoyed. Let me know down below what was your best book that had like the most unique concept, because I feel like it's always interesting to see what all these, I feel like there's so many books out there that have like really cool concepts that I've never heard of. So I would love more recommendations, but that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed and I'll see you next time. Bye.